My name is Hannah Mitchell. I'm 28 years old, and on my birthday this year, I received a gift I never expected. It wasn't wrapped in pretty paper or tied with a bow. It was delivered through the cold, blue light of my phone screen. A picture of my family celebrating my birthday, only they were celebrating it with my sister instead of me. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe and drop a comment to let me know where you are watching from. Growing up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, felt like living in a painting where I was part of the background scenery. The focus was always on my younger sister, Chloe. Our house on a quiet, tree-lined street was her stage, and my parents, Robert and Elaine, were her most devoted audience. Chloe was bubbly, a firecracker of a girl who could charm a room with a single smile. She had bright blonde hair that always seemed to catch the light and a laugh that made people want to laugh with her. She was the sun, and I was just a planet orbiting her, reflecting a little of her light but never having any of my own. I was the quiet one, the bookish one, the one with mousy brown hair that never did what I wanted it to. I found comfort in schedules and hard work, in the simple satisfaction of a task done well. But in our family, those qualities were invisible. They weren't flashy enough to earn applause. When Chloe got an A on a test, my father would clap his hands together and announce it at dinner. "That's my girl, a true star." When I graduated high school as salutatorian, my mother just smiled thinly and said, "Well, that's nice, Hannah. Just don't show off too much at the party. It's Chloe's Sweet 16 weekend too, you know." Every milestone was like that. My achievements were footnotes in the grand story of Chloe's life. When I got my first real job after college, a junior position at a local marketing firm, my parents' reaction was muted.
"That's good," my father said, his eyes already drifting back to the television. "Just make sure you're saving your money." 2 weeks later, Chloe, who was still in college, decided she wanted to be an influencer. My parents co-signed a loan for a brand new car for her so she could have the right aesthetic for her Instagram photos. They threw a party to celebrate her hitting 1,000 followers. I learned to stop expecting things. I paid my own way through college with a patchwork of scholarships, loans, and grueling shifts waiting tables at a diner where my hands always smelled like grease and coffee. I watched my parents funnel thousands of dollars into Chloe's tuition, her spring break trips, her endless shopping sprees. It wasn't that they were cruel, not in a loud, aggressive way. It was a quieter kind of cruelty, the cruelty of indifference. I was a potted plant in the corner of the room. As long as I didn't wilt, they didn't need to pay me any mind.
For years, I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself that I was building character, that my independence was a strength. I moved into a tiny apartment in a less than great part of town and slowly, painstakingly, paid off my student loans. Every payment felt like a victory, a brick I was laying in the foundation of a life they had no part in building. I eventually landed a better job at a design firm, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of stability. The constant anxiety in my chest began to loosen its grip. I could breathe a little easier, and with that breath came a dangerous thing: hope. As my 28th birthday approached, I started to dream a little. It was a Saturday this year. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the year it was different. I wasn't a struggling student anymore. I had a career, I was an adult. Maybe now they would finally see me. The week before, I was at their house for our obligatory Sunday dinner. The conversation, as always, revolved around Chloe. Her latest drama with a friend, her plans to go to a music festival. I waited for a lull in the conversation, my heart pounding foolishly in my chest. "So," I began, my voice sounding small, "my birthday is next Saturday, the 14th. My mom looked up from her plate, a vague smile on her face. "Oh, is it? 28, goodness." "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "I was hoping maybe we could do something, all of us, like a nice dinner or just spend the day together. It's important to me." The words felt heavy and desperate in the air. My father grunted from behind his newspaper. Chloe was scrolling through her phone, completely oblivious. My mother dabbed her lips with a napkin. "Of course, honey," she said, her tone light and dismissive, the way you talk to a child asking for a cookie. "We'll celebrate you." Her words were meant to be reassuring, but they felt like a pat on the head. Still, I clung to them. "Of course, honey." It was something. It was more than I usually got. For the next week, I allowed myself to be excited. I bought a new dress, nothing fancy, but it made me feel pretty. I imagined a simple dinner, maybe a cake, the four of us sitting around a table where, for once, I was the reason we were gathered. It seemed like such a small thing to ask for. The morning of my 28th birthday, I woke up to silence. My small apartment was filled with the pale gray light of a Michigan morning. I checked my phone immediately. Nothing. No happy birthday text from my mom. No call from my dad. Not even a goofy emoji-filled message from Chloe. I told myself it was early. They were probably planning a surprise. I made myself a cup of coffee, my hands trembling slightly. I sat on my couch, the television off, the silence in the room growing louder with every passing minute. 9 o'clock came and went, then 10, then 11. The hope I had so carefully nurtured all week was starting to wither. A familiar knot of dread tightened in my stomach. By noon, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. They weren't planning a surprise. They had forgotten. The pain was sharp and sudden, a physical ache in my chest. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, hot and shameful. I had been so stupid to expect anything different. Just to twist the knife, I did what we all do when we feel lonely. I opened Facebook. I figured I'd scroll through a few posts from old high school friends to distract myself. But I didn't have to scroll far. The first post in my feed was from my mother. It was a photo album. The cover picture was of my parents and Chloe, all squeezed together, beaming. Chloe was holding a bouquet of balloons. Behind them, I could see the familiar decor of my parents' dining room. My aunts, uncles, and cousins were all there, smiling in the background. My heart stopped. The hope I had so carefully nurtured all week was starting to wither. A familiar knot of dread tightened in my stomach. By noon, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. They weren't planning a surprise. They had forgotten. The pain was sharp and sudden, a physical ache in my chest. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, hot and shameful. I had been so stupid to expect anything different. Just to twist the knife, I did what we all do when we feel lonely. I opened Facebook. I figured I'd scroll through a few posts from old high school friends to distract myself. But I didn't have to scroll far. The first post in my feed was from my mother. It was a photo album. The cover picture was of my parents and Chloe, all squeezed together, beaming. Chloe was holding a bouquet of balloons. Behind them, I could see the familiar decor of my parents' dining room. My aunts, uncles, and cousins were all there, smiling in the background. My heart stopped. The caption, written in my mom's cheerful exclamation point heavy style, read, "Celebrating our wonderful Chloe today. So proud of the amazing young woman you are. A special day for a special girl." I clicked on the album. Photo after photo flooded my screen. There was my family gathered around a large chocolate cake, the kind I loved. On top, in bright pink icing, were the words "Happy Birthday." There was Chloe laughing as she opened a pile of presents. There was my dad, his arm wrapped proudly around her shoulders. There was my entire family, the people who were supposed to be my family, celebrating. But it wasn't Chloe's birthday. Her birthday is in the spring. It was my birthday. My 28th birthday. I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. They hadn't forgotten my birthday. They had stolen it. They had taken the date, my date, and just given it to her. As if I was so insignificant, so replaceable, that they could just swap me out for the daughter they actually wanted to celebrate. My breath hitched in my throat. I scrolled down, my thumb shaking. The comments section was a sea of well wishes from relatives and family friends. "Happy birthday, Chloe! You look beautiful! Hope you have the best day, sweetie. 28 looks great on you." 28. They even got the age right. My age. Not a single person questioned it. Not one person seemed to remember that it was, in fact, Hannah's birthday. It was as if I had been completely and totally erased. A ghost in my own life. I felt the room start to spin. The knot in my stomach was now a raging fire. I dropped my phone on the couch cushion as if it had burned me. I wrapped my arms around myself, rocking back and forth. The silence in my apartment was no longer just empty, it was mocking. It was filled with the phantom sounds of their laughter, the ghost of them singing "Happy Birthday" to the wrong daughter. In a daze, I picked my phone back up. My fingers moved on their own, typing out a text to my mom. My hands were trembling so hard I had to type it 3 times. "Did you forget what today is?" I hit send. Then I watched the screen, waiting. The message was delivered. A minute passed, then 5. The little delivered tag turned into a read tag. She had seen my message, and still there was no reply. Nothing. The silence from her was more damning than any excuse she could have offered. It was an admission. She knew exactly what she was doing. That's when I broke. The tears I'd been holding back finally came, not as a gentle stream, but as a gut-wrenching sob that tore through my body. I cried for the little girl who just wanted her dad to watch her play soccer instead of Chloe's dance recital. I cried for the teenager who studied until her eyes burned, hoping a perfect report card would finally earn her a hug. And I cried for the 28-year-old woman who had made the pathetic mistake of hoping, just one more time, that she might be enough. In that moment, sitting alone in my silent apartment with the phantom party glowing on my phone screen, I felt a profound sense of nothingness. I had been erased. My own family had held a mirror up to my face and shown me that I wasn't there. After the tears stopped, something else took their place. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was a cold, quiet clarity. I had spent my entire life trying to earn a seat at their table, a table where there was never a place set for me. I had been begging for scraps of affection from people who had a feast to offer, but only for someone else. I picked up my phone again. My hands were steady now. I went back to Facebook, to my mother's post. I looked at their smiling faces one last time. Then, I went to her profile and hit the block button. A small pop-up asked if I was sure. I was. I blocked my father. I blocked Chloe. I went through my friends list and blocked every aunt, uncle, and cousin who had liked that post, who had wished my sister a happy birthday on my day. It wasn't a dramatic, screaming outburst. It was a quiet, deliberate act of self-preservation. It was the closing of a door that I had been standing in front of my whole life, letting the cold wind blow in. I realized then that you can't make people see you. You can't make them love you or value you. All you can do is decide whether you're going to spend your life staring at their locked door, or if you're going to turn around and build a house of your own. That night, I didn't cry anymore. I opened my laptop. For months, I had been toying with the idea of taking on freelance design projects to supplement my income. I had been too scared, too convinced I wasn't good enough. But the girl who was scared was the girl who needed her family's approval. I wasn't her anymore. I stayed up all night, building a portfolio website, polishing my resume, and sending out emails to potential clients. I poured all the pain, all the humiliation, and all the grief into my work. Every pixel I aligned, every color palette I chose, felt like a reclamation of myself. It was the first birthday I had ever spent truly alone, and it was the first time in my life I had ever felt truly free. The 2 years that followed were a blur of hard work. The quiet resolve that had settled in my heart on my 28th birthday became my fuel. I worked my 9-to-5 job at the design firm, and then I came home and worked from 7 until 2 in the morning on my own projects. My tiny apartment was constantly filled with the glow of my computer screen. I drank gallons of coffee and forgot what it felt like to have a full night's sleep.
But I wasn't tired. I was energized. For the first time, I was building something that was entirely mine. My freelance business grew slowly at first, then all at once. A small project for a local bakery led to a referral to a restaurant, which led to a contract with a regional chain. My work was good, and my reputation grew. I was reliable, creative, and I poured my soul into every project because it was more than just a job. It was my salvation. After a year, I had saved up enough money to quit my day job. It was terrifying, but also exhilarating. I officially launched my own business, Mitchell Creative Agency. It was just me, working from my kitchen table, but the name felt important. It was my name. My family, of course, knew nothing about this. After I blocked them, my life became a silent movie to them. They made a few half-hearted attempts to reach out. A text from my mom a month after the birthday incident simply said, "Are you still mad?" I didn't reply.
My dad left a clumsy voicemail 6 months later, not apologizing, but asking if I was okay. The silence must have been unsettling for them. They were used to me being the dependable, quiet one who always came back, always forgave. My absence was a question they didn't seem to have an answer for. Meanwhile, Chloe's life, the one they had so carefully curated and funded, was starting to look less perfect up close. Her influencer career never took off. The free products and brand deals she dreamed of never materialized. Her Instagram feed was a curated collection of cliches: avocado toast, trips to the cider mill, selfies with motivational quotes in the caption. But behind the filters, she was drowning in the debt from the car, the clothes, and the lifestyle my parents had encouraged. She was all style and no substance, and the world, it turned out, could see the difference. My agency, on the other hand, was all substance. I landed a major contract with a tech startup in Ann Arbor, then another with a boutique hotel chain. I hired my first employee, then my second. By the time I turned 30, Mitchell Creative Agency had a small office in downtown Detroit. I had a team of 5 people, and we were signing deals I never would have dreamed of 2 years earlier. I bought myself a modern loft apartment in a renovated historic building. It had high ceilings, exposed brick walls, and huge windows that overlooked the city. It was the first place that truly felt like home. I never posted about my success on social media. I had no desire to show off or to prove them wrong. My new life wasn't for them, it was for me. The peace I felt was more satisfying than any revenge I could have imagined. They had chosen not to see me, so I simply lived a life that was beyond their line of sight. The inevitable, however, eventually happened. The world my parents had built around Chloe was a house of cards, and it was starting to collapse. My father, who had worked at the same manufacturing plant for 30 years, was laid off. It was a shock to his system, a blow to his pride. He was in his late 50s, and finding a new job was proving to be difficult. With his income gone and my mother's part-time salary not enough to cover their expenses and Chloe's endless needs, they started to panic. That's when the calls started. At first, it was an email from my mother. The subject line was "Thinking of you." The message was filled with forced cheerfulness, asking how I was, saying it had been too long. There was no mention of the birthday, no apology. It was a transparent attempt to test the waters. I replied with a polite one-sentence email. "I am doing well, thank you for asking." A week later, my father called. His voice was strained, awkward. "Hannah," he said, as if he was struggling to remember my name. "Your mother and we were just talking. We're so proud of you." The words were so absurd, so completely disconnected from our reality, that I almost laughed. "Proud of me for what?" I asked, my voice calm. "Well, you know," he fumbled. "Your job, your success. We hear things." Of course they heard things. Grand Rapids wasn't that big. Word gets around. They were proud of the result, now that it was something they could brag about. They had never been interested in the process, the long nights, the sacrifices, the struggle. Then came the real reason for the call. "Listen," he said, his voice dropping. "Things have been a little tough here, and Chloe, she's having a hard time getting back on her feet. We were wondering if you could, help her out. Maybe give her a job at your company?" The audacity of it was breathtaking. They had cast me aside, humiliated me, and now they wanted to use my success, the very success I had built in the silence they created, to bail out the golden child they had ruined. "I'm not hiring right now," I said, my voice flat and even. "Well, maybe you could just help her financially then," he pressed. "Just until she gets her influencer career going." I stayed silent for a long moment. Then I said, "I have to go, Dad. I have a meeting." I hung up before he could say another word. But they were persistent. The calls and texts became more frequent, more desperate. They were no longer pretending to be proud. Now they were trying to guilt me. "We're your family, Hannah. You owe us. Chloe is your sister." Finally, after weeks of this, I agreed to meet them. All of them. My parents and Chloe. I chose the location, a quiet, upscale restaurant in Detroit, a place that was firmly in my world, not theirs. I needed to have this conversation on my own terms. I arrived a few minutes early and chose a table in a quiet corner. I watched them walk in. My father looked older, more stooped than I remembered. My mother's cheerful facade was brittle, her eyes filled with a nervous energy. And Chloe, she looked lost. The bubbly charm had been replaced by a sullen pout. She was dressed in expensive clothes that looked out of place, a costume for a life she wasn't living. They sat down, and the small talk was painfully awkward. They complimented the restaurant. They asked about my drive. Then, my mother got straight to the point. "Hannah," she said, leaning forward, her voice a conspiratorial whisper, "we need your help. Chloe has so much potential, but she's just had some bad luck. A little financial support from you would make all the difference. Chloe just stared down at her menu, a picture of entitled misery. My father chimed in. It's what families do. We support each other. You've done so well for yourself. It's only right that you share some of that. I listened patiently, my hands resting calmly in my lap. I let them say everything they needed to say. I let them lay all their expectations, all their demands, all their complete and utter lack of self-awareness on the table. When they were finally done, the silence stretched between us. I took a slow sip of water. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I didn't say a word. I navigated to my photo gallery, to a screenshot I had saved 2 years ago. I turned the phone around and placed it in the middle of the table, facing them. On the screen was my mother's Facebook post, the photo of them all, smiling, gathered around the birthday cake for Chloe. The caption was still there, celebrating our wonderful Chloe today. Hay all stared at it. My mother's face went pale. My father's jaw tightened. Chloe finally looked up from her menu and a flicker of something, shame maybe or just confusion, crossed her face. I let the image hang in the air for a long, heavy moment. Then I spoke. My voice was not angry or loud. It was quiet, steady, and clear. That was 2 years ago, I said, on my 28th birthday. That was the day you showed me that I am not your family. That was the day you decided I didn't exist. I looked from my mother to my father, and finally to my sister. That was the day I stopped being your daughter. The color drained completely from my mother's face. My father opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. I stood up from the table. I placed a $50 bill on the table to cover my meal and a drink I hadn't ordered. I wish you all the best, I said. And with that, I turned around and walked out of the restaurant. I didn't look back. The emotional cord that had tied me to them for so long was finally, completely severed. I didn't hate them, I didn't feel rage, I just felt nothing. A quiet, peaceful, and liberating nothingness. They no longer had the power to hurt me because I no longer sought my reflection in their eyes. I still get calls from them occasionally, but our conversations are polite and distant, like strangers making small talk. I send a card for Christmas and their birthdays. But I never give them what they want. Not money, not a job for Chloe, and certainly not the daughter they threw away. My life is full now, but it's filled with people I chose. My chosen family is made up of my friends, my employees, and my mentors. People who see me for who I am. They celebrate my real birthday. They answer my calls. They show up. My loft in Detroit is my sanctuary. On my 30th birthday, my friends threw me a surprise party there. There were balloons and a big chocolate cake, and they all sang happy birthday, just to me. And as I looked around at their smiling, loving faces, I felt a sense of wholeness I'd never known. I had built my own table, and every seat was filled. Family should never make you feel invisible. They should be the people who see you most clearly, even when you're hiding. If they choose to look away, you have to be brave enough to walk away and find the people who will celebrate you in the light. Have you ever been erased in favor of someone else? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more stories of betrayal, survival, and quiet revenge.